Do you know what time it is? It's supernatural story time. And if you're easily scared, and even if you're not, there's only one thing left to do. Just turn off the lights, because these are stories that you listen to only in the dark. Haunted Memories, Volume 4, Story Number 1. In 2005, life felt like a perpetual Friday night. I was 19, fresh out of high school, and convinced of my own immortality. My social circle revolved around an apartment belonging to a guy we'll call Cyrus. At the time, having your own place made you the sun that the rest of us orbited. Cyrus wasn't a saint. We eventually had a falling out over a girl, the kind of messy, dramatic exit that defines your early 20s. But back then, he was just the guy with the keys and the floor space. One alcohol-blurred evening at his place, the conversation turned toward the dark edges of Orange County, specifically a place just outside the manicured quiet streets of Irvine called Black Star Canyon. Irvine is a fortress of upper middle class safety, home to the prestigious University of California, Irvine. It is a city of beige stucco and perfectly timed traffic lights. But Black Star is its shadow. Even then, the internet was whispering about it on clunky desktop monitors. Stories of cults, vanishing figures, and violent secrets kept under wraps by local authorities to preserve the city's safest city ranking. We were young, bored, and fueled by a cocktail of bad beer and curiosity. We piled into two cars, a 97 Ford Explorer driven by my friend Chris and a Volkswagen Jetta, and left the glow of the suburbs behind. The transition was jarring. One minute we were passing Target and McDonald's, the next the streetlights vanished. The houses retreated into the hills, becoming distant, lonely eyes in the dark. Then the phones died. One by one, regardless of the provider, our bars plummeted to no service. We laughed about it to mask the sudden chill. We were entering a dead zone, cut off from the world in a way that felt heavy and intentional. Our target was an abandoned farmhouse and barn tucked off the main road. Chris, an amateur filmmaker who viewed the world through a lens, grabbed his digital camera. He wanted to document the thrill. As soon as we cut the engines, the atmosphere shifted. Our friend Leo, usually the joker of the group, snapped. He began sobbing, his fist hammering the upholstery. He ranted about devil worshippers and his mother's warnings, claiming we were stepping into a playground for the abyss. We humored him, chalking it up to the booze and the dark. But looking back at the footage years later, the terror in his eyes was visceral. It wasn't an act. The property was guarded by a rusted barbed wire fence and signs promising we'd be shot on sight. We ignored them. We split into two groups. Cyrus led the girls toward the farmhouse, while Chris, Leo, a girl named Erin, and I headed for the barn. The barn door was a stubborn, heavy thing choked by dead weeds. When we finally pried it open, Chris's flashlight swept over a nightmare. The walls were a gallery of slaughter. Rafters were lined with rusted hooks and blades, left behind as if the previous owners had fled a fire. But it was the walls that stayed with me. They were covered in occult symbols, not just the cliché pentagrams and 666, but intricate, unrecognizable sigils that felt older. Then the light hit the floor. A pile of feathers sat in a pool of blood. It wasn't dry. It was dark, viscous, and sticky, fresh enough to catch the reflection of the flashlight. "It's fake," Chris muttered. His voice lacked conviction. "It's just paint." Before we could argue, a scream ripped through the night from the direction of the farmhouse. "Run! Get out! Get out of here!" It was Cyrus. He wasn't joking. Adrenaline is a strange engine. I was in decent shape, but Erin was a varsity cross-country runner. Yet in that moment, I outpaced her. We scrambled through the tall grass, our hearts hammering against our ribs like trapped birds. I made the mistake of looking back. In the distance, bathed in the pale glow of a full moon, stood a figure, a man dressed entirely in white. He wasn't chasing us. He wasn't yelling, he was just watching. He stood perfectly still against the backdrop of the dead farm. I blinked, glanced at the path ahead to avoid a fall, and looked back. He was gone. In the 3 seconds it took to check my footing, he had vanished into an open field with nowhere to hide. We reached the fence and found a third set of lights waiting for us, a police cruiser. An officer stood there waiting. He didn't arrest us. He didn't even reach for his cuffs. Instead, he gave us a look of profound pity. "You're lucky to be alive," he said, his voice flat. He told us that the media didn't cover what happened in the canyon. He spoke of disappearances and rituals that the safe city of Irvine didn't want in the brochures. He told us he'd been waiting for us to emerge, half expecting to find us part of the recent activity. He gave us one warning: never come back. We didn't need to be told twice. Later, as we sat in the safety of a 24-hour diner, Cyrus told me why they ran. They had found a basement in the farmhouse, a room filled with the same symbols and fresh blood we saw in the barn. But they hadn't seen a figure in the distance. They had looked into the basement and seen a man in white standing in the corner of the dark, silent and waiting. We never went back to Black Star. Some riddles aren't meant to be solved, and some fences are there for a reason. Next story. South of Interstate 8, the world undergoes a sudden, violent simplification. This is the Berriem Goldwater Range, a desolate expanse of scorched earth stretching to the Mexican border. It is a land of paradoxes. Ancient Native American petroglyphs sit within sight of concrete target cubes scarred by 30mm cannon rounds. To enter, you sign a waiver acknowledging that you might be stranded by flash floods or blown apart by unexploded missiles. For a Marine station in Yuma, the appeal wasn't the danger. It was the silence. In the military, you are never truly alone. And the BMGR, you can disappear for days without seeing another human soul. I went there to teach myself to hunt coyotes. I wanted the solitude, the cool desert evenings, and the sharp focus of a sunrise stalk. I traveled heavily armed, an SBR AR-15 and a .270 Win, per the advice of the range personnel. They told me they wouldn't step foot out there without a rifle. I soon understood why. The first anomaly occurred during my third trip. I had parked for the night and climbed into my truck bed to sleep under the unfiltered brilliance of the Milky Way. As I rolled onto my side, I noticed the silhouette of a tall cactus just a few feet from my tailgate. It felt wrong. I didn't remember parking that close to one. I reached down for my flashlight, and when the beam cut through the dark a second later, the cactus was gone. The space was empty. The chill that followed wasn't from the desert air. I chambered around in my sidearm and sat with my back against the cab, sweeping the light across the grayscale landscape. Nothing. I didn't wait for a second look. I drove 5 miles deeper into the range before trying to sleep again. The next evening, after a brief encounter with a border patrol agent who warned me that coyotes or smugglers were active in the brush, I made a small fire to cook. As I walked to the front of my truck, I stopped dead. 5 distinct handprints were pressed into the dust on my hood. They were clustered near the latch, as if someone had been trying to pry the hood open while I slept. I placed my own hand near them for scale. The prints were an inch larger in every dimension than mine, and the residue left behind was sticky, as if the person or thing had something resinous on its palms. That night, I awoke at 3 a.m. to the sound of voices. They were low, rhythmic, speaking in Spanish vowels just 20 feet from my truck, right by the dying embers of my campfire. I raised my AR-15, heart hammering against my ribs, and peered over the side of the bed. The camp was empty. The voices continued, projecting from the empty air like a ventriloquist trick, until I clicked on my tactical light. Then absolute silence. The following weekend, I pushed further onto El Camino del Diablo, the Devil's Path. I was 21 and possessed the dangerous bravery of the young. I headed for a place called Spook Canyon. From a high ridgeline, I spotted a campsite in a valley. Through binoculars, the scene looked wrong. Tents were shredded, sun-bleached and flapping in the wind. A cooler was overturned, and trash was strewn everywhere. There were no vehicles for miles. When I hiked down to investigate, I found a ghost camp. School books, backpacks, and a large bag of marijuana seeds were left behind. It looked like a group of teenagers had vanished mid-party. That night, a fire erupted at the site. From a mile away, I watched a deliberate, acrid blaze consume the camp. Someone was systematically erasing its existence. The next morning, new handprints appeared on my freshly washed hood. Someone had been standing over me again. I fled. As I drove the washboard road toward the gate, I felt a heavy predatory gaze fixed on the back of my neck. I stopped the truck and scanned the brush through my rifle scope. I found it near a dead chala cactus. It was hunched low, swaying with a heavy, panting breath, had leathery skin and long, powerful hind legs that resembled a grasshopper's, with knees bent in a way that defied human anatomy. It sat in the thicket, camouflaged and watching me. I took the rifle off safety. I hesitated, terrified of what I would see if it turned its face toward me. In that split second of doubt, the creature dropped flat and vanished into the weeds of the creek bed with terrifying speed. At the Border Patrol office, the news got stranger. "We have a seismic sensors on all those gates," Agent B told me, looking at my map. "None of them have gone off in 72 hours. According to our tech, you were never out there." Later, at a local bar, the agent dropped the professional act. He spoke of the heavy metal contamination from decades of bombing, the skeletons they still found in the restricted zones, and a primal alarm that went off in the brains of agents who stayed out there too long. "It's not haunted," he whispered, "but something out there is controlling your nervous system. You can't help but be panicked unless you're moving." He confirmed what I had noticed. There are no deer in the southern range, no tracks, no scat. Something has pushed the natural world out, leaving behind only the heat, the unexploded bombs, and the things with the grasshopper legs. I went back one more time with friends. I only wish we had been more prepared for what was waiting for us. Next story. Loneliness in the right measure doesn't just ache, it dismantles you. It rewires your thoughts, erodes your defenses, and leaves you exposed in ways you don't even recognize. And to the right kind of predator, that vulnerability is an invitation. I never admitted it out loud, not to friends, not even to myself in clear terms, but the truth lingered beneath everything. I was deeply, profoundly alone. After my fiancée disappeared from my life, chasing reinvention somewhere along the Australian coast, I remained behind, hollowed out. She claimed she needed to find herself. What she found instead was someone new. Since then, the silence had weight. I tried to outrun it. Dating apps became my nightly ritual. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, anything that promised connection. Instead, they reflected something distorted back at me. Carefully curated photos, polished descriptions, a version of myself that felt manufactured, disposable. Conversations flickered briefly, then died. One of us would vanish, as if the other had never existed, so I deleted them all. My days offered little relief. I worked at a private academy surrounded either by distant colleagues or students who belonged to powerful, untouchable families. Most of my social circle had once been hers. Without her, they felt borrowed. Only one person remained consistent, Marcus, the school's athletics instructor. Occasionally we escaped to the gym during lunch, shooting hoops in silence. He was the one who mentioned the speed dating event. A small bar in the wedding district. I agreed. I'm still not sure why. I arrived late. The bar hid itself in a narrow alley, pressed between aging apartment blocks. Its exterior peeled, with faded yellow paint in its windows, thick, leaded glass, revealed nothing but a dim amber glow. Inside, the air smelled wrong. Sour, stale, as though something had lingered too long and never left. A dozen people gathered around a long wooden table. Their voices overlapped into an indistinct murmur. "Here for the event?" the bartender asked. He stood at an indeterminate age, too composed to be young, too untouched to be old. His smile felt practiced. I hesitated. Marcus hadn't arrived yet. I should have left. Instead, I nodded. Then I saw her. She sat across the room in a dark green dress, her auburn hair catching the low light. She glanced up, met my eyes and smiled, calm, deliberate. Something shifted. I joined. The conversations blurred together. Faces dissolved the moment I looked away. Only fragments remained. Half sentences, hollow laughter, meaningless exchanges. Then finally I sat across from her. "I noticed you watching me," she said. Her tone held amusement, but her eyes searched mine with unsettling precision. "I suppose that means you were watching me too," I replied. "Ethan," I added, offering my hand. She didn't take it. "Too formal," she said softly. "Let me guess. Finance?" "History teacher." Her smile widened, though something behind it felt restrained. "How unfortunate," she murmured. "Spending your days explaining things no one truly understands." We spoke, but the conversation drifted into strange territory. "What do you notice about your students?" she asked. The question lingered longer than it should have. Before I could answer, she leaned closer. "There are people in this city who would do anything for the right information." The noise in the room dimmed, then disappeared. Silence. I looked around. The others were gone. The bar had changed. Dust coated every surface. The lights had died. Daylight forced its way through the windows, illuminating decay that hadn't been there before. My drink sat in front of me, now murky and spoiled. Only she remained unchanged. I tried to speak. Hands gripped my shoulders. "He was just about to tell us something," a voice said behind me. The bartender. I turned back. The woman's expression had shifted. Fear unmistakable and urgent. "Just cooperate," she whispered. Then she stood and walked away, vanishing behind the bar. The man sat beside me. "I understand you better than you understand yourself," he said calmly. "Loneliness makes the mind accessible." His grip tightened. "You spend your days around valuable minds, young ones, unformed." I tried to move. I couldn't. "You'll help me," he continued, "whether you realize it or not." He led me to the back. She stood there waiting. "Let him go," she said. "He knows nothing." He ignored her. The freezer door opened, and inside, her body. The same woman, the same face, lifeless, preserved. The one I had been speaking to was never alive. "I kept this one," he said. "She proved useful." The room tilted. "You'll do better," he added. He released me, just like that. I wandered for hours after, unable to separate reality from illusion. The memory of her, of both versions of her, refused to fade. Eventually, I decided to seek help. A clinic, somewhere sterile, controlled. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I didn't have a choice." Next story. Most people in my town believe I've lost my mind. That's fine. Belief won't protect them. I'm sharing this through a friend because I don't expect anyone to listen. Only to remember. Writing it down doesn't make it easier. If anything, it sharpens the memory. I still see it clearly. What I encountered that night was not an animal, and it was never human. I took the back road to save time. A narrow dirt path cut through miles of forest, the kind locals avoid after dark. I'd driven it before without issue. That night felt no different, at first. Then the car died. No warning, no gradual failure. The engine choked once and went silent. The headlights blinked out. The radio cut mid-sentence. Darkness swallowed everything. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, listening to my own breathing. Then I stepped out. The air felt thick, damp, with a scent of wet wood and soil. Insects hummed in the distance, their rhythm steady, almost comforting. I turned on my phone's light and lifted the hood. That's when I heard it. A single snap. Then another. Measured, deliberate. Not the erratic movement of an animal, but something careful, something patient. I turned slowly, scanning the trees. Nothing. Only shadows layered over more shadows. The sounds grew closer. Snap, crack, step. Each movement spaced just enough to feel intentional. My body tensed. Instincts told me I wasn't alone, and whatever watched me understood exactly where I stood. I called out into the dark, forcing strength into my voice. "I'm armed," I said. "You hear me? Stay back." The words sounded thin. The forest didn't respond, but the movement stopped. For a moment, silence returned. Too complete, even the insects felt quiet. I got back into the car and called my wife. "Something's wrong," I told her. "The car just stopped." "I'll call for help," she said quickly. "Where are you?" I opened my mouth to answer. Then I saw it. At first, only movement, a shape where nothing should move. My phone slipped from my hand, the call cutting out as the light shifted toward the passenger window. And then it revealed itself. It stood too tall to be natural, yet hunched low against the glass. Four elongated limbs pressed into the dirt, jointed wrong, bending inward like a spider's. Sparse, coarse hair clung to them, twitching as if responding to something unseen. Its face, flat, pale, featureless except for its eyes. Two glowing yellow orbs fixed on me with unbearable intensity. And its mouth, a stretched, impossible grin carved too wide across its face, as if it had learned the expression without understanding it. It tapped the glass. Once, softly. My body locked. Every instinct screamed to run, but something deeper held me in place, as though the thing's gaze pinned me there. The engine refused to turn. The keys trembled in my hands. Outside, it leaned closer, its grin widened. Then it reached. That broke whatever held me. I threw the door open and ran. Behind me, the forest erupted. A sound tore through the trees, high, metallic, and wrong. Not a scream, not an animal cry, but something that mimicked both and belonged to neither. Branches snapped in rapid succession. It followed. I ran without direction, without thought. The road vanished beneath my feet as I stumbled into open ground, a wide field bathed in pale moonlight. The forest loomed at its edges, silent once more. Too silent. I slowed, listened. Nothing. No insects, no wind, just my breathing. Then the feeling returned. That certainty. It had not left. I turned, and it struck. The force slammed me into the ground, knocking the air from my lungs. Pain flared across my back as something heavy pinned my legs. It leaned over me. Closer now, too close. Its face filled my vision, the glow of its eyes reflected in mine. Its grin stretched wider, splitting at the edges as if the skin could no longer contain it. Cold limbs pressed against me, heavy and unyielding. I couldn't move. Not because I was held, because I was being kept. Its head tilted, studying me, learning. Then its body shifted. Its neck extended slowly, unnaturally, bringing its face inches from mine. I felt its breath, if it was breath, cold and thin like air drawn from a place without life. Its fingers, long, jointed, wrong, wrapped around my legs. Needle-like pressure sank into my skin. Then it began to drag me. The ground tore at my back. Dirt and stones scraped against me as I clawed for anything to stop it. My hands grasped grass, roots, nothing strong enough to hold. Pain spread across my stomach. Warmth followed. I realized I was bleeding. The trees closed in again, blocking out the sky. I screamed until my voice failed. The thing did not react. It only pulled. Then, light. Headlights cut through the darkness. A horn blared, loud and relentless. The creature froze. Slowly it turned its head toward the road, and for the first time, its grin faltered. It released me, not in fear, in irritation. The sound it made then shook the air itself, a piercing, layered shriek that seemed to come from multiple directions at once. Then it vanished into the trees. I lay there unable to move, staring at the sky until someone reached me. A stranger. A driver who should not have been on the road that night. I survived. That's what everyone says, but something followed me back. The scratch is healed, the scar across my stomach remains, a jagged line that never quite fades. But that isn't the worst part. Sometimes late at night, my phone lights up. No number, no message, just a photo. Me sleeping, taken from the corners of my room. And in the background, something stands in the doorway, watching, learning, waiting. Next story. This happened a year ago. Time hasn't dulled it, silence only sharpens it. In quiet moments, when the world settles and distractions fade, my mind drifts back to that road, that night, and the truth I learned too late. Darkness is not empty. It watches. My sister lives in a remote town, far from highway and noise. I hadn't visited in years, so I used the week off to finally make the trip. I packed gifts, old clothes she could use, and allowed myself to look forward to something simple. Home-cooked meals, stillness, a break from everything. I left later than I should have. By the time I reached the highway, the sun had already disappeared. The road stretched endlessly ahead, cutting through farmland and long corridors of trees. No street lights, no houses, just darkness pressing in on both sides. That's when I saw him. A figure walking along the shoulder. My headlights caught a pale sweater first, then a small frame, a child, alone on a road where no one should be. I slowed, stopped, got out. He had already turned to face me. When I waved, he returned the gesture. "Do you need help?" I called. No answer. I stepped closer. He couldn't have been older than 13. His clothes hung loosely from his frame. His hair, white, long, slightly tangled, covered half of his face. When he looked up, one eye caught the light. Red. Not reflecting light, holding it. I froze. Only for a second. Then reason forced its way back in. Albino, I told myself. Rare but real. Explainable. "Can you take me to the next town?" he asked. His voice barely carried. Too soft for the open air. "Of course," I said quickly. "Come on. You shouldn't be out here." He followed without hesitation. No shoes, no bag, no sound. Inside the car he seemed almost unreal. Under the dim light, skin so pale it looked metallic, as though it belonged to something untouched by sunlight. "What's your name?" I asked. "Elias." The name lingered, unfamiliar in a way I couldn't explain. He said he needed to reach the police station, claimed he was meeting someone there, an officer. No family, no one to call. Something about that should have unsettled me. It didn't. Not yet. He fell silent as we drove. At some point, I thought he had fallen asleep. That illusion didn't last long. The second car appeared without warning, parked in the middle of the road. Door open, engine running, no one inside. I slowed to a stop. The silence around felt wrong, thick, expectant. I reached for my seatbelt. Something small and cold gripped my arm. "Keep driving." Eli's voice had changed. It no longer belonged to a child. "Someone could be hurt," I said. "They are," he replied. A pause. Beyond help. Movement drew my attention forward. From behind the abandoned car, something stepped into view. At first I thought it was a dog. Then I saw its size, its eyes. Another shape emerged from the trees, then another. They watched us, waiting. The first one rose, not abruptly, smoothly, deliberately. Its body unfolded upward, limbs stretching, reshaping until it stood on two legs. Too tall, too thin, too wrong. Its face retained the shape of a wolf, but distorted, elongated, pulled into something that almost resembled a grin. "Drive," Eli said again. His grip tightened. "I don't understand," I whispered. "You don't need to." The creature stepped closer, and then it spoke. "Silver King," it called, voice deep and resonant, echoing as though more than one throat formed that sound. "You travel in strange company." My breath caught. Slowly I turned to Elias. He was no longer pretending. "I am what they named me," he said quietly. "What walks beneath the moon belongs to me. What hunts in darkness answers to me." Outside, the creature laughed. a sound that rattled the air. It reached into the abandoned car and pulled something free. A small stuffed animal, worn, torn. My stomach dropped. They fed well tonight, Elias said flatly. They will not leave without trying again. Then stop them, I whispered. He didn't look at me. I cannot. The words felt heavier than they should have. I am their king, he continued, not their keeper. The thing outside approached, dragging its claws across the pavement with a slow, deliberate scrape. More shapes moved in the trees behind it, watching, waiting. I realized then they weren't just hunting, they were testing. I made a decision. Before fear could stop me, I slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward. The creature didn't move in time. The impact sent it crashing back against the abandoned vehicle. I didn't stop. I reversed and drove forward again, once. That was enough. Its body twisted unnaturally, bones shifting beneath its skin as it tried to recover. But it wasn't dead. Not even close. The others did not pursue. We drove and drove and drove. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Was that foolish? I asked eventually. Yes, Elias replied. A pause, but not without merit. We reached the police station just before dawn. For the first time, he looked like a child again, or something close enough. Will they come after me? I asked. No, he said. Then after a moment, you are no longer invisible to what lives in the dark. Something in my chest tightened. You have been seen, he continued, and what sees rarely forgets. I swallowed. Is there anything I can do? He considered me carefully, then nodded once. If you ever face them again, speak my title. Tell them you are of use to the Silver King. He stepped out of the car, paused. But understand this, he added softly. Names carry weight. Use mine only once. Then he walked away. I watched until he reached the station doors, until he disappeared inside. I drove the rest of the way to my sister's house in silence. I never told her the truth. But sometimes, late at night, I see movement at the edge of the tree line. Too tall, too thin, and once, just once, I heard something outside my window. A low voice carried on the wind. Found you.